we'll call the meeting to order and start with the pledge. Please rise.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ward, our town administrator, who's here tonight, and Mr. Kokak, one of our town council members. Thank you for coming tonight. And we look forward to hearing from anyone who would like to share some stuff with us tonight. So we will start with community forum. If there's anyone who wishes to address the board in regards to our budget, now's the time. All right.
I don't have anything prepared, but I can't not say anything. All right, Lori Bajorek, 60 Patricia Drive. I think the only thing I want to say tonight, I've had lots of things I wanted to say, but I haven't organized it yet, is something that I said to you guys 2 or 3 years ago. And it's, please think outside the box. I can't support a huge increase as we have in the proposed budget. I don't want to see huge cuts to the kids. So, I don't know, let's find a way to do something better. There have been, I'm in the home stretch of my kids in their elementary school years. The last one is finishing 5th grade. I've seen a lot of great things happen in our school since my kids started 7 years ago in kindergarten. You know, today I could say that I think my kids would get the same education whether they were at Center Road School or any other school in town, and I could not have said that when my son started 7 years ago. So that's definitely, the district has come a long way since then. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, we will start with our budget workshop. Before we get into any specifics, I just want to ask Mr. Picaro if you have any information, any additional information in regards to insurance or anything else that might be helpful in our budget deliberations.
To you, Madam Chair. At this point, from a health insurance standpoint, as I believe the board is aware through communication from the superintendent, we've taken a novel approach this year to try to control our costs in this regional collaboration with Ellington Board of Ed, and recently in conversations with Mr. Ward, we'll be putting it out to bid with not only the Board of Ed in Ellington, but also the town of Vernon. So we'll actually have 3 bids and options to bring back to the board. We will not have those numbers at this point. We don't have them at this point in time, and we don't expect them until the first week in February. But I can assure you that we are in constant contact with our broker. I try to send them an email or a phone call every day to see if they have any additional information to share. Just as a quick recap, the initial number that came in was a 28% increase based upon our experience. We're confident that we can bring it down through this collaboration in one way, shape, or form, down to 17%. So at this point in time, I have no recommendations for the board to consider as far as moving that any lower for our health insurance. But again, when the numbers come in, we'll make a decision on what's best for the Vernon community and make those recommendations to the board. We did look at other line items, and this will, I did have this planned with the superintendent to share for next week for when we discuss central administration, but we have negotiated our final rates for our heating oil and our diesel fuel, so we have some movement there to make reductions and recommendations for reductions to the board when you're ready for that. Again, it was planned for next Wednesday, but whatever your preference would be. And a couple other line items on the central office as well, through negotiating better rates with some of our vendors and supply chains.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kemp?
Thank you, Mike. The 28 to the 17%
Please clarify if the dollar figure that we're looking at is at 28% or is it at 17?
Through the chair, 17%.
17, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you have any word from the state as to where they think that excess cost sharing might come in this year and next?
To the chair. To the chair. We did not get any indication from the state. They won't tell us what the reimbursement rate's going to be, but that is, I believe, one of the questions that's in here. And I can share you some of the information that we've looked at and the recommendations that we have in the questions and answers this evening, if you'd like. Start with that.
We can do it when we get to those questions if you want.
Okay. Is that there? Good.
It's in there.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Picaro before we start? Oh, we'll probably have tons on that.
Yes, board members, you each have a packet of questions and answers that came in from several board members. I'm reticent to actually read your questions for you and answer those, but if you've looked at the ones that you've asked and you have questions, need more clarification, please ask those, and we certainly will do that. There was a question we received about our interscholastic athletics. It, of course, resides in 2 locations, the middle school and the high school. So if you look on page, looks like starting on page 11, there is, we've broken out the middle school, followed by the high school, including, at least at the high school, participants in last year and this year, the number of participants. And so we've invited Dr. Pacell to share this information with the board. I think that if it's all right with you, Mrs. Fisher, we would do that now. Dr. Pacell, if you could come up to the microphone and share your information, please. So it starts on page 11 in the questions of your backup material. That's what I put on.
So what I did is I took each sport, and the different accounts are listed across the top so that you could see across each sport what they have in the various accounts. For BCMS, which is the page 11, it's fairly simple. They don't have a lot of different accounts with monies in them, besides coaching and some monies for their buses to the events and some instructional supplies. The high school has quite a few other accounts in there just for various reasons. Some sports have more than others, but again, if you have any specific questions about any one sport, about any of the items, I can answer those for you.
Mr. Stanton.
Thank you, Dr. Pacell, through you, Madam Chair. In regards to the ice hockey team, how many towns are now part of the ice hockey co-op situation?
We are a 14 co-op. It's us, Ram, Bolton, and Coventry.
And are the costs split evenly between the 4?
They are not. We pay for certain things, and the other towns pay for certain things. So we're responsible for some part of the ice time that is spread across the 4 schools. We pay for the head coach. We have some transportation costs in there. Other towns pay for the uniforms and other things. So it's divided up in that manner. We are the only Board of Education that supports our ice hockey team. In the other 3 towns, it's funded by parents and booster clubs.
All right, thank you.
I have a question concerning girls lacrosse. I noticed that there's no money for coaching. Where do we stand with that for this coming season, this coming spring season?
At this point in time, again, we're still trying to generate enough girls to get it started. I do believe we will. We're going to start with something this spring. Right now, I think we have 16 girls signed up that are interested. So that's a pretty good number to start with. Again, I'm told that there's a pretty good group of 8th graders that will be coming up next year. So I think, I'm looking to kind of project and not put too many funds in there until we see if that's a viable option. So I put some money in there for some supplies, some for transportation. So I'm hoping we can start with club status this spring and play maybe some JV or freshman teams in a couple towns around here just to get us started. And then hopefully, again, we'll build on that next year as well when it seems like we're going to have a larger number of girls that are interested.
Thank you.
You take in receipts for for football, right? Basketball?
Yeah, we charge for night sporting events in football, boys basketball, girls basketball. Only the night games for soccer and girls and boys soccer, and our wrestling Saturday events.
Where does that money go?
It goes into the student activity, the athletic student activity fund.
And how is it dispersed?
It depends. I use it for, since I've come on board, all I can tell you is that I try to put it right back into the kids. So for instance, we bought the kids a shooting machine for girls and boys basketball last year. My football coach is requesting more sophisticated videotaping apparatus that most football programs have, so I'm looking into purchasing that. Volleyball coach requested a larger ticket item. I purchased out of there. So those kinds of things, I try to use that money to, maybe things that we wouldn't be able to buy out of the budget in those line items for a particular sport, but that really will help the athletes in terms of improving their skills. If a coach comes to me and has that, I look at what we have and we try to purchase some of those things for them.
And can you estimate for me what that total receipt is?
I don't have, I have it at the back of my office. I don't know per sport. I couldn't tell you.
No, just a total, a good guess or no?
Probably not. It depends. Like, on the boys' basketball evening games, we may average about $500. The football varies. We've had good crowds on some nights, pretty poor crowds on other nights, so it is a wide kind of span. But I can get that number for you. I have a running list of that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Sensi?
Dr. Purcell, who is responsible for paying for the upkeep on all of the school facilities? Is it the board?
Yes.
And isn't it true that the town uses those facilities a significant amount of time, including events that they charge money for?
That is correct.
And isn't it also true that the Board of Education does not receive any of the money used for that?
That's my understanding, correct.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions?
Could I direct a question to Mr. Wood? John, following up on Paul's question, do you have a sense of what kind of revenue stream Parks and Rec reports to the town that they bring in as a result of utilizing Board of Ed facilities, be they fields or gymnasiums or both?
No, I don't have that, that data on me. But I do know that the town spends hundreds of thousands of dollars to maintain the town fields. So,
The town's fields?
yeah.
Right. Yeah. Could you, at some point, share with us, if you don't have it at this point in time, but I think the board at some point would like to get an understanding what revenue stream Parks and Rec generates as a result of Board of Ed facility use. We really don't know.
Would you also like a list of all the in-kind services provided to the board for, excuse me, the upkeep of the fields?
That would be helpful, of course. Sure.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Mr. Lynn?
Dr. Purcell, other than the ice machine for the high school, what else has gone in the budget for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year rather, for athletics, particularly at the high school? Other than incidentals?
Not many other, big ticket items. I've tried to make more equitable girls and boys accounts, those kinds of things. In terms of other just instructional supplies accounts, I've tried to account for increases in what we need in terms of equipment, but those weren't big items. I've tried to, and Mr. Picard will tell you, we are the #1 probably department that needs to transfer funds, because it's always hard to estimate the transportation costs and the fees for different tournaments and events. So I've tried to clean that up and make more accurate estimates of where we're actually going to need funds in those areas. But besides that, there weren't really any huge increases.
So the high jump mat, that's all good to go for the spring?
Again, that's an item that I bought out of that student activity fund.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Pole ball.
Yeah, that was the pole ball, yeah, that was,
Okay.
yeah, pole ball.
Mr. Holt?
Just wanted to follow up on, I don't remember who actually asked the question, but Mr. Ward, and actually Mr. Carl as well. When we do the in-kind services, just so the board has a full picture of it, I know the town plows our parking lots. We don't hire the town for plowing our parking lots. So I'd like to see the full picture of what we do with in-kind services, not just the fields, just so we put a real picture on the table if people are going to bring that up. I think that's important for us all to see. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Dr. Pilson? I was just wondering why some teams do not have conference and membership fees?
Well, the reality is, we have two types of, there's 4 sports that almost everything they go to, every event they go to, they need to have a fee for. It's wrestling, cross-country, indoor and outdoor track. So you'll see larger amounts in those conference fees and memberships line items. And we have CCC fees and we have CIAC fees. The way the CCC is going to do it this year is they're assigning a larger value amount to every high school. And so instead of saying you need $100 for football and $75 for soccer, they're saying they figured out for each school that participates in the CCC, there's 33 of them now, how much that school would be charged in terms of conference fees if every team they had made the tournament. In addition to that, if your teams make the CIAC tournament, there are fees to participate in that. The reality is we are never going to have 100% of our teams qualifying for the CIAC tournament. So I've put them there in some sports and they're not there in others, because the reality is we are not going to need them in all sports. So if there's sports I'm pretty confident we're going to need them in, we put them in. I'm pretty confident we're always going to have at least 1 or 2 runners, qualifying for the CIAC races in cross country. There's something in there. Again, in some of them, I've put the funds, and some I have not. Wrestling, we're always going to again send kids to the CCC meets and the CIAC meets. There's some in there, but some we're just not going to need amounts in there. If we end up needing some, for instance, a concrete example, we have some in girls volleyball, we don't in boys volleyball. Our girls volleyball team did not qualify for the CIAC tournament this year. The boys might. If so, I can just transfer that to the boys section. But it would be putting too many funds in that area that we don't need.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any other questions? Mr. Stansel?
Just a request, this looks like it's a spreadsheet, in a spreadsheet format. Is there any way I could get an electronic copy of this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for putting this together. We appreciate it.
Well,
And back to Dr.
If there are no other questions about the questions, I think there was one other question. If I just, Mr. Kemp had asked about the excess cost. And
Page 2.
Question number 11 on page 2. Apparently, there was an article in the Journal Inquirer that indicated that South Windsor was going to estimate an 80% reimbursement of excess cost funds, which would be wonderful, and it has happened in the past. We have been budgeting at 65% reimbursement. It's a very conservative rate. What happens is the federal government provides money to the state, and it's a pot of money, and all the towns in the state put in for reimbursement for their excess cost. So it's divided up among all the towns, but there's a finite amount of that money. So a first check comes around March, and a second check comes end of May, beginning of June. But it's all based on what the towns put in for that excess cost. I do know there are some towns, actually cities, that do not put anything in the first check. They put all their eggs into the second basket. Not that it makes any difference to them, they still get the whatever rate we're all divided up by. It's just that in the first check, we may think we're getting a higher rate, when in reality, at the end of the year, you'll get a smaller amount of money. So both Mrs. Buell and Mr. Picaro had looked at this. We all discussed it just yesterday. And we believe that in looking at the last 5 years, we have gotten over 70% in each of those 5 years, sometimes nearer to 70, certainly. One was at 80 or just over 80. And so we do feel that 70, it's a risk count that we could budget at 70% reimbursement as opposed to 65. Higher than that, it is a risk. It's a risk that's possible. Mr. Picaro does have the rates that we have received over the last 5 or 6 years.
I thought I read in the budget book that it was based on 60%.
That was a typo.
Oh, 65. Mr. Kemp?
Well, the administration has identified then, as I read it here on page 11, 43,700 and so on. As representative of the 5%, they feel that we can reasonably take it as a reduction. So I guess the question is, at this point, do you wish to take any motions at this time? Yes? I move we reduce the, I don't have the account number here, Michael. It's, I'm sorry, to 55810 by $43,782.
Is there a second on that motion, Mrs. Bush?
Second.
Any discussion? Comments? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay, do we have, Mr. Stanton?
Thank you. I have a couple questions on the questions, and then I have some additional questions on the other information. The first question I had was, it was asked several times and answered several times, I thought with a good explanation about the clerks, but the one answer that was not given as part of the question was whether these will be union positions or not.
No, it's not anticipated they would be union positions.
Okay, thank you. The second is there are several line items in here that are mentioned where costs were mistaken or showed up at multiple cost centers. Do we have an idea on what the adjustment for those should be?
We've not pulled that together yet.
Okay, thank you. And then I had additional questions about the last presentation. If you'd rather I hold those, I can do that, or?
No, you've got the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned in here the capital non-recurring costs that are projected as part of our 5-year plan. And I guess my question is, we know those costs are, going to be fairly significant and probably not the end of the list, especially as we look at some of the requirements around the athletics. Those are not accounted for anywhere in this budget, are they?
That's correct.
And can I ask what the current status of our capital non-recurring account is?
If I may, Mrs. Fisher will defer to Mr. Picaro.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Through the chair, As reported at our last Business and Finance report, the Capital and Non-Recurring Education Fund, according to our calculations, this has not been confirmed by Mr. Luecke yet, but I think our numbers will be close, is at $212,870.
Thank you.
If I may just add to that, that does include the $83,000 transfer in, and a portion of that will be used to pay for the local share for the security grant that we recently were awarded.
Great, thank you. And the final question I had was, we've heard a lot of talk that magnet school kids, we've gotten a lot back in district, but we also see in this budget an increase in the magnet school tuition line. So I guess I'm curious, if we are getting some back in, what's the net look like?
The number of students,
Yeah.
we can prepare that report for you. Mr. Burt has that information, but I don't have that with me.
Great, thank you.
To piggyback off of that, do you know if the magnet school costs are going up for next year or not?
We've not been informed, Mr. Burt, you know more than I do. Magnet school tuition, have you heard that it's going up?
For next year, no, we don't know, but in the past 2 years, it's gone up an average of 3%.
And will we have to pay for pre-K next year or?
That is unknown at this time.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments, motions, whatever?
Then you be moving on to cost centers now? That's the plan, okay. One comment, I know that you gather questions from board members and then compile answers. If there's any way we could have them prior to sitting down at the table, it'd just be helpful. I can't read and absorb and know what I want to ask, so I hope that we can ask questions at our next budget workshop regarding the questions and answers that we got this evening. Okay. And before we do the cost centers, I want to say that I'm really disappointed with the offering that we got, the superintendent's budget. I was expecting something much more defensible, certainly not 5.4%. And I think a budget that includes new positions while we're eliminating positions, to me, is not defensible. And I really wish that the superintendent had represented creative ways to meet our operational needs and then advance, at least not hurt, the instruction that we're supposed to be doing. I have no crystal ball or inside information, but I just can't believe that a 5.4% budget is going to be tasteful to anybody at all. So to give the board a budget that is going to require us to eliminate a couple percentage from it, I think is, I would say inappropriate. That I think I would like to see a budget that is more in line with the expectation of the town and its citizenry. I can't do the superintendent's work. I can only do the board work, and I'm not in a position to know where the best places are to remove that kind of money. And we get direction, I understand that, but I think that it makes our work much more difficult to get a budget like this. Therefore, I'm going to try to move that to direct the superintendent to revise the 15-16 proposed estimate of expenditures to reflect a maximum 3% increase.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion or comments? Want to add anything to that motion? I don't need to add to the motion. Mrs. Bush.
I'm not sure 3% is even as low as we need to go. I would like to possibly ask for an amendment to give an exact dollar amount. I would like to see about $1.6 million cut from the budget. And I'll talk upon it if I can get a second, or a.
No.
Anybody else want to say something in regards to
Well, I think, Michelle, did you make a motion, or did?
Yes, you did.
Okay, was it seconded?
Yes, it was.
Yes.
Okay. Procedurally, Laura, what you could do is make an amendment to Michelle's motion reflecting the percentage that you want to arrive at. And so I think the two of you could arrive at consensus. I don't see these as conflicting motions, simply,
Adjusting.
yeah.
Well, through you.
Well, this is our next to respond to.
Okay.
If I didn't do the math, if we could impose upon Mr. Picaro to give us a dollar amount that gets the budget to somewhere between 2.5% and 3%, I'd be happy to agree to a dollar amount. But I'd like to know what that, or what does 1.6 represent? 1.6 seems to be random until, to me, if a percentage is attached to it.
Well, doing some rough math, I think if Laura's motion basically is in a 2.5% arena, somewhere like that. So if either you viewed the 2.5 as a friendly motion or she amended your main motion, either way, you'd be in the same place.
I just asked if Mr. Picaro could confirm that, that's all.
To the chair, that would reduce the budget to a 2.27% increase.
So I would like to amend the motion
We'll have to ask for a friendly amendment.
for a friendly
To
amendment.
agree. It's up to Mrs. Army.
So the motion stays the same, we're returning the budget to the superintendent and asking her to bring it back with $1.6 million reduction.
Correct. Which brings it down to a
Represents
2.5, or
No,
2.27.
Okay, I'll agree to the friendly amendment.
Second, or agree to that? Yes.
I'll second.
Okay, any other comments or questions, concerns? Ms. Bush?
Okay, I just would like to say that there are some areas that, in one of the questions, they talked about the VCMS having 9 teams, and they had 9 teams when they had almost double the students. So they have about 70 students on a team, and they used to have like 110, 120 kids on a team. So I was looking at it and thinking that we need to make some adjustments in the teams, and that would be a way that I could see substantial cost savings.
I was going to suggest that unless the board has specific requests of the superintendent to be reflected in her revised budget, that maybe we should hold off our discussion until the new proposal is given to us, so that then we can talk about where we go from there. But it seems to me that discussing the numbers we had this evening may be moot, and unless there are specific directions to the superintendent, maybe we should hold off our discussion of the remaining cost centers until we have the adjusted numbers.
Let's vote on the motion first, and we'll go from there. So does anyone have any other things in regards to the motion itself? Asking the superintendent to come back with a budget of 2.27% increase, which is a cut of $1.6 million. Mr. Stansel.
So I would have supported the original motion of 3%. I feel like 2.2, whatever it is probably too severe, given the lack of data that we have for sure on our healthcare costs. I think we leave ourselves absolutely no room coming in that low, and I'm afraid of what those final adjustments will be. I support the spirit. I do wish that that we'd stuck at the 3% so that then we could have I feel some better discussion about priorities and things like that. But regardless, I support the spirit. Thank you.
I don't think, I mean, we could certainly add money back in if we feel that there's something that we really want to do.
Thank you. In that vein, then, what I would like to say is that whatever is removed, we expect that the superintendent and staff will provide us with a priority list of what they feel should be added back. Thank you.
Mr. Wolf?
Just speaking to the motion as well, we did take action on the ECS money already. That was listed in the questions that came back today. There was a few other adjustments that were in there. I'd like to ask, maybe that we make a friendly amendment, that we include those numbers that have already been talked about this evening in that number, that it's not 1.6 plus. If we could just make that officially friendly amendment.
Include the reductions that we took in the in achieving the 2.27?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, this is it.
To the motion. If my fellow board members are struggling with the 2.27, I would hate to have the motion die over a less than a percentage. So if there's some magic number that garners support, I'd be happy to hear from other board members and adjust the motion accordingly, provided it stays under 3%.
Mr. Stanton?
As long as we can be provided, like I said, with the priority list for what might be reinstated, then I'm fine with moving my objection to the number.
Okay, are we ready to vote now? Anyone else have anything to say before we vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion is on the floor. It's unanimous. Thank you. Your comment about, I just feel that we have brought the principals out, so if we do have questions, I think we should at least spend the time to come here. So if we do have some questions from, we should address those tonight, and then we can do more later.
I guess as long as we realize that we may request their presence again, that's, rather than wasting their evening, perhaps it'd be nice to send them home early and ask them to come when we're discussing the cost centers with real numbers. That's all. This, what we discussed this evening with them may not be true a few days from now. I would rather adjourn the meeting and ask them if they'd be willing to return another night.
Does anybody else have a comment? Mr. Stanton?
I would tend to agree unless there's like a general type question that is, irregardless of the budget number itself that needs clarification from the individual schools. Once we start talking these specific numbers, they're going to be radically different in a lot of cases. So I think I tend to agree.
Does anybody else want to question the principals that are here tonight? Is there anything you'd like to add while we're here? Mr. Sampson,
Motion to adjourn?
is there a second? Mrs. Klein? All those in favor?